Hello, and welcome to the Dr. Money Matters podcast, the show where we discuss important financial topics that were never covered in med school. I'm your host, Dr. Tarang Patel. Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Money Matters podcast. My guest today is Dr. Disha of the Frugal Physician blog. I brought Dr. Disha on because she's a primary care physician who's been able to rapidly pay off her high physician loans, and sometimes we get caught up in the actual dollar amounts, but it's different for different people. She's the primary breadwinner in her family, and she earns a salary that's typical of most hospitalists or internal medicine physicians, but she was still able to pay off $150,000 of her debt in 12 months of concentrated effort. So in this podcast, we talked about when she realized the moment that she realized while on maternity leave that she was worrying about finances rather than concentrate on her family. And so she actually decided to do something about her finances at that point. We talk about the approach that she used to pay down her debts, and we talk about what her plans are now that her debts are nearly paid off. We also touch a little bit on the perceptions that family members and non-physician friends may have about doctors' finances and how she deals with that. Finally, we talk about a funny story that she had about when she walked into her boss's office and quit her job and then realized that she couldn't afford to do so, so she had to go back to work. It reminds me of a Seinfeld episode where George Costanza did the same thing. But Dr. Disha has a great plan for her finances, and she's been successful in eliminating debt, and she'll continue to be successful as well. You can find out more about Disha and her blog at thefrugalphysician.com. I encourage you to visit her blog and check out all her resources. Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Money Matters podcast. My guest today is Dr. Disha of the Frugal Physician. She's a hospitalist who blogs about frugality, loan payback, and some of the other issues facing physicians. And her blog post a few months back caught my eye when she talked about being able to pay a significant chunk of her loans back in a short time for which is tough on a primary care physician's salary. So I wanted to kind of get into conversation about that with her, because we all know that it's different when you're, a high-income specialist or a high-income dual specialist couple or dual-income couple that is making a lot of money to pay back loans. And it's a little bit more challenging for, single physician families or primary care physician families. So, but it is doable. And so we're going to get into that discussion. But before we do that, I want to welcome Dr. Disha to the podcast. And tell me a little bit about yourself and then how you got into medicine and hospitalist.
Hey, thanks so much for having me here. I'm so excited. I'm a huge fan and a regular listener of your podcast, so this is quite the treat.
Well, there's one of you, so that's good. Me and you. How's that? There we go.
Well, I'm pretty sure there's more than that, but yeah, it's great to be here. I used to be a hospitalist, recently changed to primary care outpatient, and my recent hobby has been blogging about money and learning about money and trying to empower other physicians to get themselves out of debt and take control of their finances, because I feel like that's a huge part of healing the healers, of being a better physician just by being more financially secure. It's done a lot for me, and I just want to share that knowledge with people and hopefully provide them with an example of, it can be done even on a primary care physician salary.
Right. So let's kind of get into your story a little bit. Tell me, so you talked about your loan payback. So tell me, what kind of loans you had. Did you, where you went to med school and in relation, like, was it an expensive medical school? Then how you picked your specialty, and then did that affect, did the loans affect your choice of specialty, where you practice, things like that? So let's just start from the beginning. Tell me, your medical school experience in terms of financial costs, things like that.
Yeah, so medical school, I went to an in-state school in Georgia, which actually was a very frugal choice. It was probably the best deal I could have found for medical school at the time. And I did the same thing for undergrad. I went to the state school and did the honors program there, which was really actually an awesome deal because I got like 3 scholarships and I didn't have to pay for any of it. The medical school portion I did have to pay for. And it was one of these things where even though the cost of living wasn't high in the town that I lived in and the cost of the medical school wasn't high, I still maxed out my loan as far as whatever they would give me. And I had this mentality of, oh, I'm going to be a doctor. It'll be fine. I deserve this.
Right.
Or I need this.
Let me ask you about that because, that's one of the toughest parts is when you first start out, you have no idea. And like at the financial aid office, a lot of times they don't really, I think now there's a little bit more, guidance about it. But at the time you or I were in medical school, I don't think the financial aid office really told you not to take out the maximum.
Oh, yeah. I don't even know if I met with anybody. It just sort of happened online. I just elected to take out the most or whatever was allowed, based on the cost of living calculations and all of that. Yeah, there was really no guidance as far as that goes. And, being part of the Indian community, I was a part of a community of doctors. And while I knew some that were paying off their loans, most of them have actually been educated in India. So, as far as community knowledge went, student loans was not a big part of that knowledge. Most people didn't realize that it would be a huge burden.
Right. That's a very good point. I think a lot of people in that community don't really realize the amount because when you convert the costs, while in India it's expensive and it is a burden for those going there, in pretty much any other country, I think the cost of higher education is a lot more affordable than in the U.S., no matter what field you go into. So, a lot of times people coming from other countries don't have the same loan burden in terms of sheer dollar amounts that those educated in the U.S. do. So it's almost a negative sometimes to go to a U.S. school in that respect. Obviously, other issues make it a positive to go to the U.S. schools, but that is a tough thing that I think a lot of non-physicians it doesn't even occur to them. So.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The whole debt mindset is a very American thing, right? In India, people don't take out loans to go to school. At least when I grew up there, that wasn't a thing at all. But not just, the doctors that do come here have usually been practicing in India and then have to retrain and do residency and, really rough it out for a little while, tough it out.
Oh, yeah. It's difficult in all other respects, definitely, too. So I'm not saying that I would pick that route, but it's just,
Yeah, don't yell at me, Auntie. I love you.
So, you finish medical school, you're in residency, and at that time, did you know anything about loan payback, loan forgiveness? Were your loans kind of just, growing at that point?
Yeah, they were just growing. And I think I was in, willful denial. I didn't want to look at them. And I knew that things were accruing interest and such. Actually, I'm old enough to, at the first couple of years, but I don't think FedLoan, the website, was really a big part of my life. I was really just going by the paper statements. And I generally didn't read them very much.
Exactly. That's true.
Just put them in a folder.
Right. I think a lot of residents at that point, you're just so overwhelmed with what's going on with residency that you're like, you know what? This I can deal with at another point. Unfortunately, when you finally do open up that envelope, you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, man. And, I actually took a year off in the middle of med school and took some time to think about whether I wanted to go into medicine because after the first 2 years, I was a little burned out. And I actually went out to Southern California and taught there for a little while, for a year. And I was earning a salary, but I actually didn't pay anything towards my loans. It was very irresponsible. And so that interest accrued. And when I started repayment, all of that compounded, and that was very painful. Right.
It's tough because we don't think about it during the time that you're, in that. But those years definitely do come back. And yeah, those are lost income earning years at the higher end. So, but that's all right. It's not always about money. If it got you kind of recentered, then that's, probably worth the sacrifice.
Oh yeah, it was a great year. I wouldn't have, I went from like 190,000, I think, of student loans to like 230 at the end of it by the time I started paying back. So yes, that sucks, but that year was invaluable for my mental health and just knowing that I was doing the right thing for myself. So.
Right. Okay. So now you're in residency, your loan balance, you've kind of willful ignorance. At what point did you start, deciding, hey, I got to attack this problem?
Yeah. So I made it through residency. During residency, I was making income-based repayments, and I was looking towards public service loan forgiveness as an option. I chose internal medicine because I was thinking about going towards the cardiology route, but then I realized that I just liked internal medicine a lot, so I decided to just stay there. And when I started my first residency, my post-residency job, my first attending job, we did what everybody feels like they should do, I guess, is to grow into their income. And I didn't really realize we were doing that as much as, we did, but I got a nice job and we needed a place to stay and we could get a doctor loan. So, so we bought a house, and we didn't buy like a humongous house as big as other people in my job had, and we were still looking at, we got the smallest house in the nicest neighborhood that we could find. But it was still a really nice place to live. It was a gated community on an island off the coast, and it was beautiful, So we definitely upgraded a lot and then had to adjust all of our other expenses to keep up with that kind of lifestyle, with that kind of a neighborhood. And things spiraled out of control pretty quickly.
Okay, so you're practicing, you're living on an island. That sounds awesome.
It was nice.
and so you're seeing basically all other aspects. That's something that a lot of people don't even think about initially. Is when you first are buying a house, you don't think that the rest of the lifestyle kind of inflates along with that house, because your social circle also changes a little bit once you become an attending, and once your neighbors and such. So you don't really see it happening while it's happening, and then you start realizing down the line that you're like, whoa, I'm making a lot of money, but it's actually going pretty quickly as well. Did you come to that realization quickly, or what did it take for you?
Yeah, I mean, what really the eye-opening time for me was maternity leave, because I was a hospitalist and paid on a productivity model mostly. I didn't get paid when I was not working. So on maternity leave, it was just the expenses and barely any income, short-term disability, but that's really not much. It is something, but it's not much. And at that point realized, like, gosh, man, I have this huge student loan bill, and I'm too worried about money to really enjoy time with my baby. I was sewing a cover for my couch my entire maternity leave. I could have bought it, but I didn't want to. And that was an eye-opening time for me. Like, gosh, what am I doing? This isn't worth it. This is not what I want from life. I don't want a nice house with nice things when I can't spend time with my family. So that was the changing point for me, was realizing that what I was doing was getting me away from what I actually wanted in life, which was to spend time with my family and have a fulfilling work career. And so that's when we decided to make a huge change. It was a good time for that because we were about to change jobs at that point too. So.
Okay. So at that time, when you come to this realization you're on maternity leave, were you thinking about changing jobs because of the financial side of it, or because the job itself wasn't, what you wanted, and therefore it was kind of bringing you down, and then the financial part of it was also just another burden as well?
There were a lot of factors. One was that my husband was going to school when we were down south and doing his master's, and his job, he's in IT, and there weren't any jobs down there for him. So, and he wanted to move up closer to his family. And so we decided to move up north and start there. So.
Okay. So you make the move and you start realizing, okay, you don't need that being in medicine is stressful enough. Having kids is stressful enough. The added stress of the financial burden that you're facing, you realize that, you're going to at least try to take one of those things off the table, or, at least attack it in the best way you can. So talk to me about how that happened in terms of, at this point, when you come to this realization, what was your loan burden and what was your plan to attack it?
Yeah. So at this point, I had been making payments for about 4 years to my 3 years of residency, and then actually really 2 years of attending, so 5 years. And my loan balance wasn't even back down to my original borrowed amount yet, which was infuriating. I'd been paying only interest basically that whole time. And it was really, quite disgusting. Like, we're like, we have to change this somehow. So my husband and I sat down and we made a budget. This is like the worst thing that anybody can say
Right.
ever. I apologize. But that's what we had to do. And it was terrible. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. No one likes that,
I know. Well, but the thing is, like, just like anything else in life, I mean, how are you going to know what your patient is doing if you don't look at their labs? How are you going to make a treatment plan? If you don't know their vitals, and that's basically what you're doing when you're sitting down and making a budget, is you're just looking at just the data so that you can extrapolate some sort of conclusion. And we hadn't been doing that at all. So we just sat down and made, okay, here's our income and here's the stuff we owe. And then the whole how much do we spend was hard to figure out initially. But starting off with just the fixed expenses of the mortgage and the loans and the phones and the cars, you start off with that, and then you can fill in the rest as you go along. So basically what we did was we first just made a goal and decided to start a debt snowball and started to put extra money towards our smallest loan first.
So you were using like the Dave Ramsey thing, right?
Yeah, only I didn't know Dave Ramsey at the time. I did know the White Coat Investor. So at that point, we just had heard about the debt snowball, so we just did. So we lined up our debts in order of smallest to largest and decided to go after the smallest one first, notwithstanding the interest rate. We just didn't look at that as much. And so we paid off one car and the second car, and then around that time is when we moved. And so when we moved, we actually downsized a lot. And we made a conscious decision to only rent rather than buy. And we decided to rent only what was just enough rather than what we were used to.
And was that difficult? Because that's a hard thing for most people, right? Is you're living in this, it sounds awesome, this great house and an island, and then you're downsizing, you're renting. Like, how did that, was that difficult? I guess it's a tough thing. I would think it's a tough thing.
Yeah, it's kind of cringeworthy, isn't it? Yeah, when you think about it and you think about it theoretically, it sounds terrible. But, we had been living that lifestyle for just 2 years prior to that. And it's not really a huge, big change in your daily well-being other than just the mild annoyances of having less space. And actually having less space was a little bit of less headache of cleaning. So that was nice. So when we first started to look for rentals, it was pretty depressing because there's just not very many rentals up here that are in good shape because there's a bunch of college students. So yeah, but we finally found a good one, and it was right next to the hospital, so I could walk to work, which was great because there are a lot of snowstorms and I didn't want to drive. And so it actually worked out great for us. And we ended up, we're still renting. In fact, we've decided to keep renting for another couple of years to really just get back on the positive side financially. And then hopefully, really make out, this is kind of our time to just turn everything around.
Right. Okay. So let's go a little bit more detail into that. So you make the move, you're going from a mortgage. I'm assuming it was a decent mortgage based on how you're describing the area. And then you go to renting. Did you sell your house, or what did you do with that?
Yeah, that was that was an interesting process. We did sell that house. We actually kept our residency house as well. So we're actually renting that. But we sold the house that we were living in, and our expenses went from about $2,400 a month for the mortgage, tax, insurance, and HOA to about $2,100 for rent. But so really, a gain of $300 there. But there was a lot of extra gain in just not having the expenses of remodeling all the time. Like, when you have a nice house, you feel like it needs to look nice and be filled with nice things. And so I just spent a lot of money trying to make my house look like Pinterest.
That's right.
The Amazon boxes, they just appeared out of nowhere.
Right.
So there's none of that, like the whole pressure of that I put on myself to make my house look like this awesome place wasn't there when we were renting. So I spent less money there and less money on unexpected maintenance costs. Like, our house on the island was great, but it got flooded right before we sold it, like 5 days before closing. It was terrible. Hurricane Irma. And we had like hurricane damage every year, every summer. So Yeah, so that was a lot of cost.
Yeah, because that's what they say is, I mean, for average homes, you need to plan on what, like about 1% of your home cost a year in annual maintenance. And then what you're describing, it's probably even higher because of the location. So those are things that, people don't think about initially, again, when you're buying a house, is that's something you should also budget in. And so your 2,400, in mortgage now, goes up even, further, a few $100s per month just on that alone. So, okay, so you're saving, 3, 4, $500 a month based on all these factors. And are you basically then, as you're paying back your loans, are you just throwing them at more loans?
Yeah, whatever gains we're making, we're just rolling them into paying off the loans faster and faster. And as the cars got paid off, all that extra cash went straight towards the loan. So we've just been throwing everything we have at it.
Okay, and so how long has this process been going on now?
It's been 12 months exactly, actually.
Okay, and what kind of, like, how much have you paid off? Where are you standing now in terms of your loans?
So in the last 12 months, we have paid off $150,000 of principal off of our loan. Yeah. So like first 5 years making payments and barely made a dent on the principal, mostly just interest. And just 1 year of just really hunkering down and paying these things off. And it's basically almost gone, which is amazing.
Wow. Okay. And in that year, you went back to work after this does this include your maternity leave time, or is this?
No. So that 1 year clock kind of starts when my husband went back to work. So that was a big deal too, of course. So he found a job and he went back to work in January of 2018. And so January 2019 is like that 12-month time frame.
Okay. So this is the part that, I'm trying to get a little bit of info for the listeners so they can kind of get a little bit of an idea. You're a hospital, or at least at the time you were a hospitalist, now you're in primary care, but give me a ballpark on what kind of income you were making when you started this process, and then, how you were, and did you have a ton of savings at this point or not? And then were you just cutting back from everything to throw at your loans? So give me a ballpark about the income.
Yeah, so we basically, my husband and I together, his income, my income, rental income, and some VA benefits that he gets, probably around a little bit over $300,000 a year.
Which is, in line with what I think hospitalists are making, around the country, if they have a working spouse who's not a physician. So I would think that's about a reasonable estimate of the average. So, not 300 solo, the hospitalist, but 300 combined with other income. And so in that time span, did you've paid off $150,000?
Yeah. So in that 1 year, we paid off $150,000. We made some more changes. Like we started the whole change process during my maternity leave, which was more like 18 months ago, but we paid off $150 in the last 12 months. And yeah. And so really like the stuff that adds up is like the little things that you spend on that you don't realize you're spending on, like going to work and buying a coffee and then buying lunch every single day, all that adds up.
So you didn't do that, basically?
No, yeah, stop doing that.
So you're brown bagging, you're taking your coffee from home, you're doing all the stuff that they kind of tell you to do, but no one really does it. You're actually doing it.
Yeah. I mean, when you put the numbers into a compound interest calculator, which by the way, changed my life finding that. Yeah. It just putting in the fact that you save $200 a month not buying Starbucks. And then you put in a compound interest calculator and then you put in lunch and whatever. You get up to, in a 30-year working time frame, you could save $250,000 just by cutting that stuff out.
And then you also said you lived right by the hospital, so you're cutting commuting costs as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Walking, not commuting much. Not, sometimes I drove because I was lazy, but.
Right.
But so, yeah. But, the big three expenses are housing, cars, and food. So aside from just buying stuff at work, housing, we addressed. Cars, don't buy new stuff if you can. And the fact that our cars were paid off was a huge boon. And then food was a little difficult because I like to cook. But I actually found this pickup service at Walmart, which just has changed my life. It's great. I would never thought I would shop at Walmart. Actually, I grew up really poor. So it's kind of like a personal insult.
Right.
It's like, I worked so hard to get out of that, poor situation. And so initially I was like, why am I frugaling down so much? But it really actually helps so much because the Walmart thing, I'm not paid by them.
Right.
I guess disclosure, but I can like order my groceries online, and there are several services that do this. You order them online, so you're in your kitchen and you can kind of see what you have and what you don't have. And then you just go and park in a spot and they bring everything out to you so you don't have to like deal with.
Yeah, and then you're not necessarily buying stuff that, catches your eye, right? You buy what you need, and it saves you time.
Yeah, and you have a like a running ticker in the side of your screen that shows you how much money you're about to spend.
Right? I love it. That's awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome.
It's great.
I want to get back to the psychology of that in a second, but because I think that's a very fascinating part of this. But let's just kind of continue on this train. So you're a year in, you've knocked off 150,000. You're almost now done paying off your loans?
We have 58,000 left.
Okay. So on schedule to pay off in a few months and in about 3 to 4 months if you continue the same pace?
Yeah, 18 months is probably what it's going to take. So 6 more months.
Awesome. Well, that is fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm sure for you that's going to be, it already is a good feeling, but that the moment that you actually send that last check in is going to be, a big weight off your shoulders.
I can't even wait.
Exactly. The question that I find interesting about that part of it is, now that you've, kind of changed your lifestyle to do this, once you pay off the amount, do you see yourself kind of then going, hey, you know what? I've done it. Now I kind of want to, get a little, live a little bit? Or do you feel like you don't feel deprived currently?
That's a really good question because my husband and I have been sort of brainstorming what we're going to do. I think we're probably going to give ourselves like a 10 to 20% raise in spending. But honestly, it doesn't feel deprived now. The only thing that might feel deprived is like just, a bigger house. But then again, like we talked about, you upgrade too much and then you get all these, costs that are coming along with that. So we're going to try to keep it contained. And I really want my kids to grow up in like a middle class neighborhood, And so I think we're going to stay with that lifestyle and try to live on at least half of our income.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And that is the prescription for success, right? That's what they always talk about is if you can live on, not even, half is ideal, but even, 2/3 or, 3/4, I think most people are not even close to that. So, if you continue that, you're going to be in a good spot for the long run. But I wanted to kind of circle back a little bit to, you had said that you'd grown up poor and you wouldn't, you wanted to have graduated from shopping from Walmart and those kind of things. I think, is that, you have kind of come around to the frugal mindset now that you've, you're an attending and stuff, but how is that other people around you, not your husband, but family members, things like that, what do they think in terms of, do they give you pressure? Because you're like, you're the doctor now. You should be spending. Do you ever feel that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, pressure from outside is definitely, it's subtle though, because I've kind of owned the frugality. And that personally was difficult for me because frugality was always it was always there in my upbringing, but I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be the big spender, like, oh, cool, I'm rich here, I'll buy this. It's all good, And I quickly realized that that's not going to get me where I need to be or where I want to be. So now I've realized the value of frugality again and have sort of adopted it and really just owned it. And blogging about it helps a lot. Because now my family members are like, all right, fine, it's just a frugal physician.
Right. They're like, when are you going to turn into the baller physician, right? That's what they want.
Yeah.
No, that's a tough one because I think that, and looking at your website, your main article, the Start Here article talks about your conceptions or your preconceptions of what being a physician would be like versus what the actual reality of being a physician is like. And I think that is, that's a realization that most of us kind of go through at some point in our medical school, or residency training is we're like, whoa, this isn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. And that's probably true for any job once you kind of get into it, but it definitely is not how others realize think about it too. And I think physicians, probably lawyers, they kind of suffer that same thing from other people, from the outside perspective, not just those who are inside of it. But that's good. I think that's a tough thing to do. So if you're able to balance that with outside expectations, that is going to be a significant factor in your success. Let me talk a little bit, because one of the blog posts you had also was talking about you had walked into your boss's office and quit, and then you realized and thought better of it. Tell me about that, because that's like a George Costanza moment from Seinfeld, honestly.
Yeah, not my finest moment. But yeah, so I just got I was running around and doing the hospitalist thing and admitting and discharging and admitting and discharging. And, and I was just like, this is not what I want to do. This is not where I wanted to be. And I just had this breaking point. And I walked out one day and said, I told my boss, I just can't take this anymore. And there was there were some specific circumstances surrounding that. But as I walked out, I called my husband and he was like, I know, I knew you weren't happy. So I'm glad you did that. But I'm at the mall. And so, we're just shopping. So I'm just going to come home. I'm just going to put all this stuff back. And I realized that, that again, while we had been making strides on the loans, we hadn't made enough for us to be financially free of them yet, and that me not having a job would be a huge setback, and a kind of, even though we had an emergency fund, it wouldn't be enough to sustain us. So I went back and ate humble pie and got got back into the ranks. But at that point, started planning my exit and found a different job, more with more finesse.
Right. But that is kind of the dream for most people, right? A lot of people are like, oh, they want to be able to do it. You actually did it. Even we'll leave out the second part. We won't worry about that part. But that's all right.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of that's the whole point, is that of this whole blogging and the whole taking care of money matters. And this is why I like your podcast so much, that doctors get trapped in a non-ideal job sometimes because of our student loan debt and because we don't know how to handle money. And because of that, we get put in these situations that may not be the best thing for us or the patients, but we feel like we have to play along because it's our livelihood, it's our families, and that's a place that we do not need to be as a society. We cannot. We are in charge of our patients' lives, and we have to own that. And we can't just keep blaming the upper guy, and we need to take responsibility of our house first, get our finances in order.
I think that's a very good point. And I think that's an underrated factor that's contributing to this whole, physician burnout crisis is the financial part of it. I mean, it's different when you are working because you want to, not because you have to. If your work situation, and you've experienced this firsthand, is not the way you want it to go, but you have to be there, that's rough. And that is a tough stress that you have to face. And, I don't expect the average American to feel sorry for physicians, because they're going through this at their careers as well. So it's not like we're asking, or physicians are saying, oh, pity us, because we're not saying that. But the reality is that one thing physicians have the luxury of doing is using their income to at least mitigate the financial aspect of it. And therefore, like you said, you were able to then more gracefully go to a different place, and that was a little bit happier for you. And then once your loans are paid off, if you want to change how you practice or alter the hours that you work and things like that, you'll be able to do it and still have by most standards, a very good income. So that's a positive thing for physicians, is that, even later career physicians are not that far away, if they, take control of their finances, of getting into a good financial situation.
Yeah, like Dave Ramsey says, we have a big shovel. We can dig ourselves a really big hole, but we do have a big shovel, and we're very blessed with that. So if we decide to take control, it doesn't take very long to get out of a hole. I mean, 2 years ago, my net worth was negative $250,000, I think. And already, we're up to 200 already. That's just a couple of years. And you really just have to decide to take a look at the student loan bills and the interest accruing and, how much you're spending, and realize that you can either be working to pay compound interest to someone else, or you can have that compound interest coming to you. It's a choice. If you want to keep taking out debt and keep it hanging around and keep living a really large lifestyle, you certainly can. And you're happy with that, great, but if you want to turn it around, you can.
Absolutely. And the same applies. We talk about it for finances, for, your health in terms of exercise, things like that. These are all tough things to do. And, the prescriptions are somewhat simple, but they are tough to do. So it's awesome that you are, able to kind of stick through the toughest part, which is the first probably 6 months. And then you start seeing some progress, and then you want to continue it. So I think that's fantastic. So let me kind of change gears a little bit. We had initially talked when you started the blog and you were, talking about the loan payback, and you were anonymous at that point, and then more recently you've kind of revealed your somewhat of your identity. Have you received any positive, negative feedback since that's happened?
A lot of positives. I mean, kind of mind-blowingly positive feedback. When I first put it on Twitter, it kind of got way more response than any of my other posts had.
That's awesome.
I was like, wow, this is amazing. So yeah, I mean, it does help that I'm not some, voice speaking from behind a curtain. And I was a little afraid to own all of my past, honestly. And it feels good to just, be an open book.
Right. It's there now. And you know what? Honestly, that resonates a lot more with people. So, and then people will continue to give you more encouragement as you continue your blog and your financial journey as well. So that's good. I think one of the things that you talk a little bit about on your blog were some financial or some frugal tips. Let me ask you this. You mentioned wine. I know you're a wine connoisseur.
I don't know about that. I just drink wine.
What's an underrated wine that can still fit into your frugal lifestyle, but feels like it's not?
There's so many. I like the deep, earthy reds. So in that category, Route 1 is an amazing one. Terima Hill is an old grape that's a really nice, rounded taste. And then there's Languedoc from France that's really cheap and really good. There are a lot of good wines out there if you look up on 90 plus lists, and then just, and there's some that just haven't made it to be popular enough yet that their price is still low, and that's the good stuff. Nice.
All right. It's always good to get some, names out there, because you get overwhelmed when you go to, the wine stores, or our Costco has a phenomenal wine selection, but you never know, right? You're like, okay, it's this or this, and then you see the 90 plus, you're trusting them, and usually it works out pretty good. So that's good. I like to get some specific names. Let me ask you this. We'll finish up here a little bit. So now, you're almost done paying these loans down. So what's next for you and your blog?
Right now, well, our plans are to pay off the loans and then save up a down payment for a house and actually take out a traditional mortgage and do it right this time, hopefully. Well, I don't know. We're kind of going between that and taking out a cash out refinance on our rental, because we do have a lot of equity there. But anyway, I'll blog about that later.
Right.
But yeah, so we're just sort of planning our next moves, and the biggest goals are, to be financially independent by the time we turn 40, and hopefully we can get there.
Okay. Good. I think that's a good, timeline for physicians, because it's enough time after training for most. So obviously, if you're going into one of those 9-year residency fellowships, it may not be there. But usually for the average physician, that's a good timeline to kind of get back to a net zero or a slightly positive level. And then hopefully those first few years after that, you can kind of crank it out, even, continue to crank it out so that you can get to a significant number if you want, or slow back down at that point. So good. Well, that's awesome. And I think, it's a good message for the listeners that it's doable on the average physician's income to pay these back. And I mean, I don't know if everyone's going to be able to do it as quick as you did, which is incredible. But, even if they do it in 2 or 3 years, I think,
that's still
the positive
amazing.
is still great. So, yeah. So great. So, Disha, thank you for coming on the podcast. Tell my listeners where they can find out where your blog, what the address for your blog is, and where they can find more information out about you.
Yeah, so I'm Dr. D at The Frugal Physician, which is thefrugalphysician.com. You can find me at Twitter at Frugal Physician, on Instagram at Frugal Physician, or Facebook at The Frugal Physician.
She's got them all.
Sounds a little redundant. But I'm here. I'm just a real person, just like you, in a low-paying specialty, and I'm just here to encourage you and to give you the stories of other people that are doing the same thing, getting themselves out of debt. You can too. And here with the Dr. Matters podcast, this is a whole community here to support you and get your finances in order.
Awesome. Well, I think it's just, it's great that so many docs are now talking about, getting their finances in order. But what's even more amazing is because you're in this space, I'm in this space, we kind of think that most of us think that way. But it's still mind-blowing how many don't. I think the White Coat Investor tweeted something about today, his group. He's an ER doc, and his practice sent out something about a steak dinner for a financial guy. And I was like, oh, my goodness. That's the people in his own group. So there's still a long way to go in educating our fellow physicians. So I'm glad you're doing your part. I'll continue to do my part, and hopefully we can make some differences out there for other people as well.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much. I really enjoyed being here.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Dr. Money Matters podcast. I want to thank Dr. Disha of the Frugal Physician for being my guest, and I hope that it's inspirational to hear the story of someone at the more conventional physician salary and specialty to still be able to make a huge dent in their debts and progression in their financial independence journey. So often we hear great stories of high-income specialists or dual-income people that are able to pay down debt and achieve financial independence early. But I think her story is much more real and probably resonates with more of the audience. So she did a great job. Congratulations to her, and I know she's going to be successful in the future with her blog and with her financial journey. So keep up the good work, Disha. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Dr. Money Matters. If this is the first episode you have heard, I appreciate you taking the time out and listening, and encourage you to listen to our past episodes. I would also appreciate you leaving me a positive review on Apple Podcasts, and also recommend you join our Facebook group where we have ongoing discussions about this and other topics in order to help each other reach our financial goals. Finally, I encourage you to subscribe to our email list and also to subscribe to the podcast itself on the various podcast app that you use in order to be kept aware when the latest episode comes out. More episodes of this podcast are available at www.drmoneymatters.com and on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Audio versions are also available on YouTube and Facebook. And you can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Money Matters or on Facebook or Instagram at Dr. Money Matters, all spelled out. Thanks for listening, and if you get a chance, please leave a positive review for this podcast as it helps move the podcast up the rankings on iTunes and gets it exposed to a wider audience. Thanks for listening once again, and stay tuned for another episode coming soon.